Okay, question two. How can I take care of myself and still be present for everyone else? So, again, we're going to start with our nervous system. So, it senses danger and it floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol. And that's triggered by thoughts that often stem from our socialization as women. So, here's some examples. I won't be a good fill in the blank if I don't fill in the blank. I won't be a good friend if I don't show up for the brunch, even though I'm exhausted, right? And that will create a people pleasing response where we go to the brunch, even though we're exhausted, because we think our only option is like we have two options. We can not go and our friend will be upset and we'll be upset that our friend is upset, or we can go and we'll be miserable, but our friend will be happy. And it just seems like the only option where someone can be happy is if we go to the brunch. But there's a third option where we honor our desire to rest and our need to rest and hold space for the disappointment of our friend. Hey, I know this was important. I'm really sorry I can't make it. Do you want to hang out next week? And this is where you can be like, I can be a good friend and honor my own needs, right? You can create a little bit of nuance with just an and thought there. I can take care of myself and still be a really amazing friend. Okay. Another thought that will possibly be triggering something like this is people will think I'm fill in the blank. And this is going to create self doubt. People will think I'm selfish. This one comes up a lot. I have to do these things because I don't want people to think I'm selfish. Because if people think I'm selfish, remember what we were talking about before with our socialization, that our value comes from other people, then of course we're worried about what they're going to think. Another thought that might be triggering these things is I will feel really guilty if, and you fill in, I will feel really guilty if I don't go. And then think about what we were just talking about in the answer to the last question about how we start shoulding, coulding, and woulding and beating ourselves up for something. And so we're going to take that inner critic, which is a fight response, where instead of punching someone else, the way we traditionally think of a fight response with our nervous system, we're actually just punching ourselves in the face, right? So I will feel really guilty if I don't show up. People will think I'm selfish. I won't be a good friend if I don't go, right? When we're talking about a question like, how can I take care of myself and still be present for everyone else? These are the types of thoughts that are driving us to put our needs last. So let's dive into that socialization a little bit. So we talked about in the last one, but I'll repeat again, our value and our validation comes from service of others. It comes from praise and appreciation from other people. That's how we know we're doing it right and we're doing it well. And so if that praise and validation comes from others, then we don't have the muscle to gas ourselves up for taking care of ourselves, for putting our needs first. Like you might have a cool Instagram post where people are like, yeah, go girl, where it's like, spent the day taking care of me. But there's nothing really in society that gives us a way of really celebrating something like that, right? The way that it would be celebrating if you'd done this really selfless act and prioritized someone else and really gone that extra mile. Just think about the difference in like how much praise and validation that you get in one scenario versus the other. The final little bit back to the feeling of selfish, right, of our validation is feeling selfish if we buck that caretaker role, if we try to shake it off, if we're trying to shirk our caretaking sort of place in the world, and that feeling of someone else might think I'm selfish, or I might tell myself that I'm being selfish if I don't go to the brunch, or if I don't bake the brownies, or like whatever it is that we're doing instead of getting our own needs and desires on our own to-do list. Okay. So then what kind of behaviors result from this? We've got the socialization giving us these thoughts that trigger our nervous system and give us like specific response. But what are the outcomes when that, or the behaviors when that happens? So one is that we erroneously keep thinking there's a point where our own needs will make it on the list. And then we're surprised or disappointed when that doesn't happen. We think there's a point where we get to rest. We think, oh, after, like in the workplace, we might think, oh, after we make that new hire, like this will get a little easier after we just get to the end of the quarter, or once this big release is pushed out, then I'll get to rest. But it's not true. You'll actually never get to rest unless you put rest on your list of priorities. And sometimes that means putting rest on the list of priorities over someone else's needs. The others is, of course, we prioritize other people's needs because what I was talking about earlier, because there's no prize, there's no validation, there's no celebration of our contribution when our contribution is to ourselves. And so if we're relying on other people to tell us we're doing it right, or we're doing a good job, or we're humaning in the right ways, if we're not looking inward for the answer, am I worthy? Am I valuable? Am I a good person? In answering that for ourselves, then of course we're going to always prioritize other people's needs because we want that validation and we want that feedback. Like, it makes total sense. All right, so what are the outcomes that come from this? One that I see super, super often is people, they call it procrastination, but it's really just to get a break. Because the list of other people's needs, particularly if you're in a caretaking role with a smaller human, or you're sandwiched between two generations and you're taking care of folks on either side, we shame ourselves for procrastinating, but honestly, it's the only time you're going to get a break. It's not procrastinating, it's just taking a break, but then we shame ourselves for it. So then we don't even really get to enjoy it. So what we want to do is think about this as, here's how I want to prove to you that you're not actually procrastinating. Because if there were 3 things left on your list and you were like, I can knock those out in a half an hour and then I get 2 hours to myself, you would be totally motivated to finish those things and then get the time for yourself. But if you just look at this endless list and you think, not right now, I'm going to spend an hour scrolling Instagram, or I'm going to binge watch a show on Netflix, or I'm going to whatever, right? Whatever we're saying that we're doing to procrastinate, we're not actually procrastinating, we're just taking a break. But what happens when we do this, when the other people's needs and their list of needs is never, never ending, is that we start to secretly or not so secretly resent the people in our lives that we care about the most. And that's a really terrible, because then we're shaming ourselves on top of everything else of like, this is my job as a partner or a parent or a leader or whatever. And then you start feeling bad that you don't want to do these things, that you're tired, that you're sick of it, that you're like, really, you can't just go like run your own bath. You're like 8, right? Or whatever it is, right? But then, and then we shame ourselves on top of it. And that's a really, really crappy spiral to get stuck in. The last outcome is that thinking that there's a place in the future where we get to rest that doesn't exist. I talked about this a second ago. It's got to go on your list. Rest has to be part of it. And not just rest, but rest and recharge. If you go and Google ways to complete the stress cycle, or even ask ChatGPT to give you 100, I really suggest you pick 10 and have that as like your kit, right? Of things that take 5 minutes and things that take a whole day, that when you're done, you feel recharged, right? And they can be so many different things, from like going for a run to painting watercolors to listening to music to driving along the beach. There's just so many ways that we can rest and recharge that we don't think about. And they really help complete the stress cycle and let our bodies go through this thing that we need to be able to continue to live in like this chronic stress society that we live in. So here's my tip for working on how we can take care of yourself and still be present for everyone else. So here's where I suggest and statements. So I can be a good friend and not go to the brunch. I can be a good parent and not bake the brownies for soccer practice, snack, whatever, right? I can be a good leader and not be available 100% of the time for all office hours, because I also believe I want to be a good parent who is there for pickup every day, whatever it is, right? But use these and statements like, I can make a mistake and not make it mean I'm a failure, and not make it mean anything about me or my future or my ability. All it means is I just made a mistake. So these and statements will give you nuance. And this is where the power is. You can give yourself permission not to be perfect. You can give yourself permission to where you feel like I'm still meeting this criteria of what a good is, a good parent, leader, whatever it is, right? I'm defining that criteria, but I'm giving myself the nuance of I can be a good friend and not go to this brunch.